Welcome back, Flareheads. This is Kevin Crowder, founder of BusinessFlare, and your host of your podcast here. Today, we're going to continue our conversation with Charita Allen and Ken Stapleton. You remember last time we talked about work from home or remote work, winners and losers amongst companies, amongst cities. Today, we're going to talk about leadership. We're going to talk about the influence of entrepreneurship on the talent pipeline. You know, there's a lot of different reasons that companies and businesses are struggling to find staff. And one of the reasons is that members of their traditional labor force aren't coming back to traditional employment because during the pandemic or coming out of it, they decided to go ahead and start their own business. Given what they've been through, given the shift in priorities that many workers discovered, they decided that maybe it wasn't so scary to go start their own business and take that plunge into entrepreneurship as it had been in the past. We'll also talk about management and how important it is for managers to understand talent and how it's really management that's going to be the thing that creates winners and losers out of a lot of different companies. Once we finish this conversation in our upcoming episodes, we'll talk about the workspace and how the workspace is evolving and what does that mean for governments and for big businesses, for communities, for downtowns, for large and small communities. And then we'll also have conversation about talent attraction. How do you recruit talent? How does Disney recruit talent to Disney World? How do tourism cities recruit talent compared to how Rust Belt cities compete? But let's talk about leadership for now.
So I have a question, and let me know if this is too far off field. But as it relates to retaining talent, when you are not able to have them work remote, like, are there any conversations right now around workforce development, management training, any of those kinds of pieces? Because we all know people leave jobs for a number of reasons, and one of the main ones is your boss or your manager. Like studies have shown that. And so, is there any work being done around that? Are you hearing any work being done around it? Because it's not just I need to work remote. It's like, well, why do you need to work remote? Do you not like the work environment? Do you not like the systems? Do you like, why is it so important that you're willing to leave?
I do see a lot more conversation and maybe awareness of just how important leadership and management is during the, where we are with talent now, trying to make business owners and managers much more aware of how important that is to retaining their talent. Mm-hmm. And not to be making, make assumptions that, and you're right, that it's for other reasons that maybe don't have to do with that. I mean, it's bad management is the easiest excuse and the easiest reason to leave a job.
Yeah, it's not money.
And the most frequent. It's just, it's absolutely true. Charita, I have to tell you, I mean, I'm sitting here racking my brain even about some of the stuff we were doing in Cincinnati around pipeline, talent pipelines. And most of our companies did not have what I'll call explicit kinds of approaches to talent retention. Mm-hmm. They were more focused on, where's the next set of warm bodies coming from? And the university certainly was like that without question. I don't think anyone's really kind of paying attention to that particular issue right now because they still haven't hit the wall on the talent side. Wow. They're still able to kind of keep things going okay for now, but that reckoning I believe is coming very quickly. And it's really just going to be around people like we're talking about, people saying, no, I'm not going to work, for a bad boss in a bad environment and spend 3 hours commuting. When I can be my own boss effectively, I can write my own ticket, if you will. And there's plenty of opportunity for me to get my benefits elsewhere, set up my own retirement program, manage my health care reasonably well. And so we're headed into this environment where particularly larger companies, but even small, I have friends and family who run small companies. Their biggest growth or even just stay alive challenge is going to be talent.
Yeah.
But again, we haven't hit the wall yet, so I don't think people have woken up to it quite yet.
Well, I think that there's also, even for people who aren't going to work remote, who that's not a big issue, who are going to come in, who are going to work, and who are going to work for someone else, who aren't going to be an entrepreneur, they still have the choice now of being able to work where they're enjoying what they're doing. And so they still don't have to put up with a bad boss and put up with doing projects that they don't want to do. They have options where they're still more in control of their own happiness at work, even if it's just going from, okay, I'm not going to be a barista at this coffee shop. I'm going across the street because I'm going to enjoy working there and I'm not going to enjoy working here. And so I think that creating that environment and for your employees is going to stay important. I guess my question is, and I don't know the answer to this, and I think about how we operate, and I've been clear with our team that, we can say no, and not every business is in that position, but that, we're going to work on projects that we want to work on in places we want to work on them with people we want to work with, and that we don't need to make ourselves crazy with projects that are going to,
crazy or miserable,
make us crazy or miserable. And I think, and now we also have work from home and remote work but I think everybody on our team is entrepreneurial also and kind of brings that. And so I wonder when we think about those companies, is a bad boss just a bad boss? I mean, can you learn and change that skill, or is it just your nature?
Sure.
No, plenty of companies actually groom managers and teach them skills.
Yeah.
We used to call them people skills. There are different terms for them now. But I think more of that is going to have to happen, probably. And the best companies will figure it out. I have no doubt about that. I mean, when I think about the culture at Kroger, for example, they'll figure it out. I'm not worried about them. Procter & Gamble was a little bit tougher.
And I think my question is more about smaller businesses and entrepreneurs, not so much the big companies who understand the management side of it and can deal with that. But if you're a small business and you're an asshole boss, or if you're just an asshole, can you change your sort of work environment for your employees enough that they don't take advantage of a different option that they might have to, say, go down the street?
But I think that still applies to the larger corporations and to government. I mean, I think
it does without question, but I think it's a great question. And I think, Kevin, what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of businesses fail because they don't know how to manage talent.
Right.
Yes.
There's no question about that. I think that what's bouncing around in my head today is, as we think about what we do, and we know how important that talent is going to be, how important it already is, but that it's actually going to get even more important, like almost logarithmically. How do we help regions, not just communities, but let's take a Martin County. How do we help them understand the talent that's in place and almost a new paradigm for engaging that talent? And so how do we get them to embrace gig work? How do we get them to embrace, how do we get not just the government, but the business community to embrace gig work and entrepreneurs and, purchasing, 1099 talent, I'll call it, versus traditional talent. And how do we help put systems in place to do the matchmaking around that? And
I think on that, even how do you, when we talk about the drivers, when we talk about the regulatory driver, how do you, if from a policy side, you really want to address some of these talent issues, when you start talking about that sort of gig work, how do you, get some changes about 1099s even through the IRS and some of those, more flexibility for businesses to be able to adapt as the talent landscape changes.
Or honestly, even, what we've all done business assistance programs in our careers, right? This is a new kind of business assistance. So helping really small companies navigate being that 1099 employee or having 2 people work for them and navigate, a purchasing process, even at a big private company, right? Let's look at space industry or whatever else it is, right? How do they get supported that way so you keep the talent and the work local and that spending stays local, right? So we get to cycle it through the economy 4 or 5 times. I think it's just a whole different kind of system. Even as people are saying, I can't find employees, the kind of my gut response is, well, find vendors then, right? To your point earlier, Charita, right? How do we help that system get strong in the places where we work?
Well, and part of that is also identifying whether managers have soft skills and emotional intelligence, and or whether they're able to, I don't want to say be trained to acquire it, but again, like we're dealing with a different workforce. Like the labor force has changed. Options have changed. I think we have transitioned to where employees are saying, I have options. And it's not just about dollars anymore. It's about all of these other quality of life things. And some of it, like Kevin said, some of it's transportation, some of it is sort of company culture. I mean, it's hours worked, it's a number of things. And I think you have to have managers that understand that fundamentally people have choices and it's not just about money. And I do feel like there are folks in leadership who really and truly believe that let's just raise the minimum wage. We're going to pay $20 an hour. And now we're going to be flooded with applications and everybody's going to want to work for us. And it's like, that's not where we are right now. That may have worked 10 years ago, but it's not going to work right now.
Right, because especially as you see this movement towards entrepreneurship and this movement towards side hustles and these things, minimum wage is not relevant to those decisions at all. It's not even part of those considerations any longer.
Especially if you look at the different generations. Like, I mean, there are folks that know how to use TikTok and YouTube and other things where they can make $1,000 in 2 days. I mean, again, for them, the minimum wage it's not an issue.
So I want to tell you a story. I have 2 nieces that work at a major Amazon distribution facility near Cincinnati Airport. And they were telling me they don't have a schedule. When they want to work, they show up and clock in and work. And they love it. They get paid well. They work their butts off, but they're not afraid of hard work. But they get to work when they want to work. And to me, that's one of those adaptations. Yeah. Now, Amazon's a big organization, so they can afford to do that and everything else. But I think we're going to start to see more of that kind of adaptation. But to your management point, Charita, when we talk about workforce development, we talk a lot about basic skills. We talk a lot about, just getting people to the point where they can really enter the workforce. Even when we looked at Maine, that's a lot of what we were talking about. But I think you're onto something. I think that the frontline managers are going to require a whole new set of skills that probably 95% of them don't have.
Right. Well, and to give you an example, we have a major manufacturer that was having who received an incentive for their project. So they received economic development incentives from the city, the county, and the state. Come in, they've got job numbers they need to make. They're working with all the players in the ecosystem, the educational institutions, the Tennessee College of Applied Technology. They're working with the high schools, everything. First shift, they've got just this revolving door. So at some point, and that's starting to bounce back to the city, which gave them an incentive. It's like we're starting to hear from constituents that they got fired after 3 weeks working there. So we sit down, we have a conversation with the plant manager, and we're like, what's the issue? It's like, people aren't getting to work on time. It's like, what's the issue? Well, their shift starts at 7. They need to be on campus at 6:30 and they need to clock in at 6:45. It's like, okay, we're talking to people. They're like, yeah, that's pretty clear. We all get that. So what's the issue? Well, the issue is the buses don't run that early going to the plant. And so we asked the plant manager, it was like, so the issue is transportation. He's like, well, nobody told me it was transportation. So we asked the people, it's like, did you tell them it was transportation? Yeah, the bus, like the bus route doesn't get us here by 6:30. It gets us here at like 6:50, but we're supposed to be here at 6:45 for a 7 a.m. shift. So we have a whole conversation. We call in the local CARTA. They come up with a solution to do shuttles. Like all of this is working. But again, like the frontline supervisors were not asking the right questions. So when it got to plant manager, he's like, well, we can fix this. But again, it's that frontline supervisor is like, how can we help you get here on time? Well, if that frontline supervisor doesn't have those kind of soft skills to be able to have a conversation with someone, keeping in mind, they're just trying to start the production, the assembly line on time every day to meet product numbers are supposed to meet. We get it. But again, it just goes back to, you're going to have a different kind of manager if you're going to retain people. And some of it's just being human and having a conversation. I mean, it's like 3 strikes and you're out. Well, you know what? If the bus never runs on time, or if there is no shuttle at that time, or if you can't get an Uber to show up in your part of the community at that time of the morning, you're not going to fill that. You're going to have issues filling it. So again, I keep coming back to this emotional intelligence and the ability of management just to have everyday normal conversations with people.
So there's a new need for upskilling of management for talent retention.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
And I think it's not just the management and the adaptability of management and those skills, but it's also for communities that are going to be competing in economic development. It's those communities, just like with you, having the ability to come in and help figure this out.
Yeah.
And be able to resolve these issues, because as these talent wars, this talent issue escalates. I mean, there's a book. One of the concepts we had for the podcast was periodically, maybe we do a book review or talk about books that are relevant to the conversation. There's a book called When the Boomers Bail by Mark Loutman, I think is his name. Loutman. And it was written before the pandemic, before this talent
before
issue.
The Great Resignation. Yes.
Yeah. And it was written, but what it was saying, listen up, cities. All these boomers are going to be retiring and you ain't ready to fill these jobs when they leave. Number one, you just don't have enough people with these skills. And that just this transition of the boomers leaving the workforce is going to create Winnersville and Losersville between cities. And now you've got that accelerated so much now with the Great Resignation and this move to entrepreneurship that it really is both in the public and the private sector, and where you have public sector agencies and efforts in economic development and workforce development figure this out in the right way, along with private sector businesses in their community that do it also at the same time, then you really start creating these cities who can start rising to the top and being able to, in competing and being that Winnersville, so coming out on the winning side, because it's gonna more and more start into almost this adapt or die type of situation as we keep going down this path.
Well, absolutely.
From both a regional and a national economy basis, I think one of the threats that is out there right now that we are not paying attention to is virtual offshoring.
Oh, yeah.
And what that's going to mean for the U.S. economy in particular, but even for state or regional economies, if all of a sudden companies are like, okay, well, we can't find or keep the workers here, and if I need somebody to code or do certain things that don't require high levels of English, I can get that for 5 to 10 cents on the dollar in 6 other countries, right? And we're going to, I think, have a really interesting challenge around that. I don't know how we coach them through that, though.
What do you mean?
Sure yet. Well, I mean, so you could regulate your way out of some of that,
right?
But the companies won't want you to. It's not unlike when we, offshore a bunch of manufacturing, right? They just, if the margins were better. So the next thing we're going to offshore is talent. And that's going to have a major impact on a lot of local and regional economies in the US. You'll still see wealth creation. It's just that the cash or the money that's flowing through the local economy is going to be less and less because it's not going to get earned here and remitted. It's just going to actually get sent there on payday, right?
When that makes me think of not just offshoring, but when we think about some industries where you just go to automation, but also this makes me think of as we've stepped up trying to redoing the website and start putting information more and more out on the blogs and social media and some of those strategies with our company. Is I've been doing just a lot of research into different widgets and different things that go on your website and all of that. But besides the offshoring of talent on some of that, I can get a widget now that uses AI to write my daily blog post based on 5 to 8 keywords that I give it. And so just like on some things, manufacturing and some industries, you have automation. On some more other sectors, where does AI start coming into some of this?
Well, there's AI and any other technology silver bullet, because I think that's what particularly large companies are investing in, right? They're looking, Kroger's looking at the automated delivery and the automated picking, and, Kroger's investments in Florida have all been about delivery of groceries. They're not opening a store, but they have 3 major facilities in Florida. I mean, this is kind of their workaround the labor question,
sure,
right? The talent question. But they need talent someplace to run all those automations, right? It just doesn't have to be local.
Mm-hmm. And so it brings me back to, and this started with over my consulting career, I've worked on 3 different communities on the Space Coast. And the thing that's been highlighted to me more than anything else with all 3 is it really brings us back. If you're going to compete for economic development, quality of life is what you better be focusing on, and the place that you have, because that's what's going to drive your talent, your residential base, and everything that's going to come in to serve it, or that you're going to try and keep and retain to serve it.
Well, and it would be interesting to take a look at, obviously with the Space Coast, I would hope that engineers working on getting me to space are all working in an office and not working remote, playing with the dogs and cats during the middle of the day and doing laundry. It's like, I kind of want you in your office. Call me crazy, And so it would be interesting to take a look at, like, where are those industries where remote work could be an option, or certain departments within that industry, the work is remote. But what are the industries where, and some of those are thought industries where you just kind of need everybody in the office just for, those collisions and being able to run something by a colleague who's just down the hall, as opposed to, Zoom works, but it doesn't always work. Sometimes I think you just need to be in an office together. And I wonder
you can't read body language. You can't build trust. Yeah. There are a lot of reasons that we know we're going to need to spend time together. I think the question is just going to be, what's the structure of that? I think it's going to get restructured. I think you're going to see more of it take place in third places outside of offices, right? So the craft brewery that has a meeting room, I'm not kidding. It does a strategic planning session.
Well, we have an example is in Rockledge. We have a coffee shop that opened up. Their son plays for the New Orleans Saints, And that's how I remember them. But they, in opening the coffee shop, they recognize that. And in the back of their coffee shop, they have meeting rooms.
Yeah, but I still think there will be companies that want commercial office space. Like,
I think so too. I think I've gotten this question a lot in communities where we're working. And when we're looking at sort of our market potential and our estimates on what we think is going to happen in the different, office or retail. And I don't think office is going away at all. I think it could even expand because it's going to be different. It's not going to be the same, but it doesn't mean it's going to shrink. One thing we have seen, and we saw this, we ran for downtown Doral, the office space. One thing I've been seeing a bit of is not a lot of return to the office yet, but no one's giving up their space.
right.
And so we haven't seen the vacancies go up because part of that is you've just still got a lot of uncertainty. Right. Some industries where you are going to see a return to the office, and we saw, some articles over the last year about, especially in New York and in the financial sector, JP Morgan and some of those firms, saying you are coming back to the office. And they've had to kind of make adjustments on some of the timing of that. But in some of those industries where you will have people coming back to the office, you may see the need for more office space because now everybody's got to spread out more.
Thank you for being with us today in our continuing conversation about talent. Please join us again next time as the three of us explore the evolving workspace and the importance of flexibility in the workspace and how one size doesn't fit all for companies and for workers. Thank you for tuning into Flareheads. This podcast is dedicated to the entrepreneurs and the small business owners who toil every day to build and grow their dream, and also to those public officials that understand the perspective of those dreamers and who actively support them, understanding the positive impact they have on their community's quality of life. The Flareheads podcast is hosted and executive produced by myself, Kevin Crowder, alongside executive producer and senior editor Julian Duque, and it is a production of the BusinessFlare Publishing Group. Please connect with us on all social media. You will find us there as BusinessFlare, and you can download our ebook, Governing for Economic Development, from Amazon in English and Spanish. The theme song is Surf Rat, an original composition performed by Miami's heavy metal band McFisty and written by Kevin Crowder and the rest of the band. And a special thanks goes out to our tribe of Flareheads, our team, our clients, our friends, our partners, our family, and the rest of Flarehead Nation for your support and inspiration. Please join us again. Thank you.